One of the signs an enterprise technology project may be headed for trouble is when a client says, "We have yet to identify our project sponsor." It sounds innocent enough. To the uninitiated or the overly optimistic, the absence of a sponsor is easily seen as normal. It's just another part of project preparation. Unfortunately, this points to likely challenges that are all too common on enterprise technology projects. In today's video, I will share with you why executive sponsors are so important to the success of digital transformation and the specific aspects of the role that will help you avoid common project challenges. I'm Eric Van Slyke, Managing Director of Soleva, a consulting firm that provides coaching, workshops, and resources to help organizations achieve success in their most critical change initiatives. For more than 20 years, I've advised executives across industries and functional areas how to master the skills of leading digital transformation, and most importantly, how their role as change leader is essential to project success, whether the executive sponsor, a member of the steering committee, or the project manager. So let's talk about sponsors. It's not unusual for projects to begin without an executive sponsor because a high percentage of tech projects originate with IT and not the process owners. After all, IT is the keeper of the applications. They manage the relationships with vendors and know when software versions are sunsetting their tech support. They also know when there's an opportunity for multiple tools to be consolidated to reduce overall technology spend. So it's often IT that launches an RFP, and the process owners are either happy IT has taken the initiative or at least resigned to the fact that an application update is a necessary evil. During the next phase, once the vendor has been selected, it's also not unusual for the sponsor to remain unidentified. At this point, the project team and the implementation vendor are likely in the weeds of contract details or the first round of project planning and are too consumed with those efforts to give the role of sponsor much attention. And to some extent, identifying an executive to serve as the sponsor is above their pay grade. Eventually, at some point around this process, a sponsor is named and the poor soul doesn't know how critical they are to the success of the initiative, or rather how critical the role is to project success. Because so much of the work started with IT, they often assume the project is a simple technical implementation. It is a tech project after all. They see their role as nothing more than overseeing the tactical elements as the project's pushed along. And here's why that's a problem. Enterprise technology projects are not technology projects. They're business projects. This is something you've heard me say before, right? The reason is that because you are implementing standardized technology, your business must adapt to align with that standardized technology model. That means you likely will change your data structure and reporting, your processes and procedures, and potentially approval hierarchies. And when you change all of that, your roles, your jobs, likely will change too. And as almost all IT leaders will tell you, the amount of change to the business operation absolutely must be driven by the business leader, not an IT leader. And most importantly, these changes cannot be made reactively in response to the technology. They need to be made with a strategic focus, with the long-range business goals in mind. I hope you're beginning to get the picture. The project sponsor of an enterprise change initiative is a position of essential organization leadership. At its core, being a project sponsor involves 7 key responsibilities. First one is advocacy. First and foremost, the sponsor is the focal point of a project. They are the primary advocate and play the most critical role guiding, supporting, and making the case for the change effort from its inception through its successful implementation. They're the face of change in the organization. They must be the champion of the initiative and its biggest cheerleader. This involves communicating regularly with employees and other key stakeholders to keep them informed about the progress of the initiative, address any concerns, and celebrate milestones and achievements along the way. The sponsor must inspire confidence and enthusiasm for the change, fostering a sense of urgency and momentum that propels the initiative forward. Number 2, vision. Next, the project sponsor is responsible for setting the strategic vision and the objectives of the change initiative. This is the future state that the project team, vendor, and organization are working to create. This involves aligning the project with the organization's overall goals and ensuring that it addresses key business needs or challenges. This also includes articulating a clear rationale for the change, outlining the benefits it will bring and the value it will deliver to the organization. A vision is important because it's the end state that's used to benchmark decisions. Without a vision, project decisions are benchmarked against the current state. In other words, instead of building for the new and improved capability, you're recreating the current capability. And usually, that's not what you want to do. Okay, here's an unfortunate truth I've seen during my career. Too many executives don't have a vision for their business. They're keepers of the status quo, who at best make incremental changes that keep the train running. So I watch them really struggle articulating a vision for the project because they don't have one for their business. And from an enlightened perspective, I can appreciate living in the present moment. But it's a real problem for enterprise projects, and here's why. Enterprise technology projects are a disruptive catalyst for significant operational change, whether that's convenient or not. And that must be proactively driven by the business leader, not a reaction to the technology model of a particular vendor. After all, it's your business, not the vendor's. A vision, some form of blueprint for the future, even a rough one, provides the benchmark against which project decisions can be measured. Without it, I've watched project teams push back hard on the technology model, saying it won't work. In reality, they're simply trying to recreate their current operation in the new tool. And if the vendor can do it, it's usually at a much greater cost and an extended time frame. And that defeats the purpose of moving to more advanced technology. So the bottom line is that a vision is essential. It doesn't need to be anything complex or eloquent or the result of a weekend retreat into the mountains. It does need to set the criteria for the business you're trying to build with this change. Once the sponsor articulates the target, their next responsibility is linking it to performance measures. They establish how the project will determine whether it's been successful. These could be financial, operational, or qualitative measures, but they are the criteria that the project team will use to assess the output of their work and know whether the project is on track to achieve the desired outcomes. In the reality of projects, I've found that performance measures are best created as a collaborative process across stakeholder groups. It helps create buy-in and usually produces stronger measures. But the sponsor ultimately is the champion of the measures and the facilitator of this process. The sponsor also makes sure they're communicated throughout the initiative. The fourth responsibility is ownership of the business transformation activities and other operational decisions. This is about putting together a team to address the operational changes, as well as leading the process. The vendor will configure their technology. They may even recommend changes to operations, but the sponsor must actually drive the operational changes. This is one of the biggest areas of confusion for many technology projects and why they often end up in contract disputes. As this video has identified, too many organizations start without a sponsor in place, and as a result, the vision and operational goals are not articulated, or they are generic statements taken from the vendor's last project. In other words, your stakeholders have not bought into the goals because they don't sound specific to their organization. Then, once the project starts, stakeholders start to understand that the vendor solution is very different than their current work environment. This is when they start to push back. They say that the vendor technology won't work, or that it must be customized for their environment, or they begin to get really concerned about the volume of operational changes required to align with the technology. And again, it makes them question the solution. And then before you know it, you have a high volume of stakeholder resistance, not only within the project team, but it also likely makes its way back to the executives who have the power to kill the project. The real problem here isn't a gap between the solution and the current environment. Rather, it's that stakeholders don't see a process in place to close that gap. So one of the most important responsibilities of the sponsor is to take charge of the operational business transformation by putting together a team and a process to identify these gaps, build the integrated solutions, and most importantly, communicate the solutions back to the core project team. That's how you make sure the operation and the change are integrated. That's how you make the change sustainable. And this leads to the next responsibility: stakeholder alignment. Sponsors are responsible for leading stakeholder engagement and alignment, particularly at the executive level. As the primary advocate for the vision of the project, the sponsor must engage with stakeholders. This is about communicating the goals and process for the project, obviously. It's also about listening to stakeholder concerns, their operational pain points, and their suggestions, and baking them into the project process. And most importantly of all, it's about creating a forum for these different perspectives to be heard and understood across stakeholders. That's what creates alignment. A key change leadership activity is making sure that stakeholders develop a shared perspective of the problems the organization's trying to solve and the solutions required to solve them, both project-specific and the broader transformation solutions. This is important because when stakeholders see things the same way, they're more likely to be committed and working together to create a successful outcome. Projects are strengthened when we develop a comprehensive understanding, and that understanding is shared across the organization. This is not accomplished with a PowerPoint presentation or a video. It's done through dialogue. It's done at a personal level, and the sponsor leads the way. The last two responsibilities are resource allocation and oversight and validation. The sponsor is responsible for allocating the resources needed for the project. This includes obtaining funding, assigning budget, and ensuring access to key personnel, technology, and other assets required for project success. They're also responsible for oversight of the project, especially validating that the project is achieving the milestones required for success. Once a project's underway, the team and project managers can be very influenced by the vendors they work with every day. That's not necessarily a bad thing because the vendor's hired for their expertise. That said, the sponsor can serve as an important guide to make sure the project team has the organization's business interests in mind and ensure that the project does not become dependent upon the outside consultants for important decisions. Advocacy, vision, measurement, transformation, stakeholder alignment, resources, and oversight. Those are the 7 responsibilities of a project sponsor. No matter whether a project is using waterfall, agile, or another methodology, every project needs a sponsor to provide strategic direction, secure resources, and champion the initiative across the organization. This mobilizes support from senior leaders as well as stakeholders within the organization, building a coalition of allies who are committed to driving sustainable project success. If you found this content to be valuable, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Our mission is to help make you a more successful project leader. And to help build your skills, make sure to watch the 5 lessons of top change leaders. The link is in the description. I guarantee you, if your project leaders and teams understand these 5 lessons, your projects will achieve success. Change not only will be managed, it will deliver value before, during, and long after the project's completed. Thanks.